Hello everyone, my name is Frida Chico and I'm the host for How I Got In. Today we're going to talk with Mary Joseph, who went to Hofstra University for an undergraduate degree and is currently attending the University of Florida.
University of Central Florida, yeah.
The University of Central Florida. So hello Mary, why don't you give us a quick introduction and how was your college application process first for undergraduate?
Hi, thanks for having me. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in New York, and I really wanted to go somewhere that was close to home. So I went to Hofstra University, which is right on the island, very close, a 30-minute drive, although I commuted. And the application process from high school to undergrad was relatively simple, mainly because I was privileged enough to go to a school that had, a multitude of guidance counselors coaching you through the way you needed to fill out the application, what you needed in your application to stand out to colleges. And so I really feel like my high school experience may not be indicative of everyone's high school experience because I did have those tools and resources available to me. But I do know that part of the application is your personal statement. And for me, I talked about my experiences living in both India and America and how that shaped me as a person and why my particular perspective is diverse and would benefit the institution. And so when universities are trying to accept you or figure out why they should accept you, it's not just about how much you can quantify your success as a person, but what kind of perspectives you can bring and how you can benefit the university, because you are an investment to the university. And so by talking about things that you bring to the table, you're best showcasing why you should be accepted as an applicant.
Can you tell us, I know that you got a full ride scholarship, and was that stressful for you? Was that something that you needed in order to attend college?
Yeah, so I don't come from a super wealthy family. I am the daughter of immigrants. And so I had always been raised with this idea, like you need to make sure you get a scholarship, otherwise we can't afford to send you to an institution like Hofstra. And Hofstra is a private college, so it is more expensive than going to a state college. This is not to say that going to state colleges or going to community colleges are bad in any way, but obviously, like I went to a private college because there are resources available at private colleges that aren't available to public colleges. And so those sort of applications, oftentimes there aren't separate applications to apply for. It's just something you're considered with your test scores and your personal statement. But sometimes if you feel as though your funding is not substantial in comparison to what you can bring to the table, you can email the university and appeal. And that's what I did, right? I got a pretty massive scholarship, and then I realized it wasn't going to cover the entire cost of tuition. And so I emailed the university, emailed financial aid, and requested an additional scholarship and an additional sort of grant to fund the rest of it. And they accepted because I provided reasonable justification of I bring a lot to the table. So that's why you should really fund my education, because otherwise I won't be able to bring all of these positive aspects to your university. And this is my top choice. So that's really how I was able to get a full ride. I wasn't offered it right away, but I was able to get it because of persistence and because I was able to sort of market myself in a way that worked.
And being the daughter of immigrant parents, I assume that they were not familiar with the application process for colleges in the United States. So I'm sure that that must have been stressful for you. Can you tell us how did you figure out step by step everything?
Yeah, my parents only knew from my brother, and my brother was applying to American colleges from India. So it was a different process for him because he was applying as an international student and I was applying as an American resident student. So it was completely different processes. My parents had no idea. They really could only help me with FAFSA because they know the tax information, and I didn't. But everything else about the application process, I had resources at my high school. I went to the Bronx High School of Science. It's one of the 8 specialized high schools in New York City. And so there is a robust network within that school that was able to help me. But at the same time, it was like a learning curve for myself and asking other um, people in my community how they were able to get through the process. So it is harder when you don't have your parents like some individuals do, but at the same time, there is a robust network out there if you're willing to search for it.
What tips would you recommend to students who are not familiar with these networks? How could they find it in their high schools if they don't have such a strong community like you did?
Yeah, so I know that not all high schools have this, but all high schools do have a guidance counselor. And I think if your guidance counselors aren't as proactive as they should be, then you need to be proactive to your guidance counselors
Mm.
and your English teachers. Talking to these resources is super important when you want to apply to college. Additionally, if there is a community-based institution you go to, like a church or a mosque or other, religious institutions that are community based, you can definitely ask older students who have gone through the process already. And there are those resources out there. They might be harder, and you shouldn't have to deal with it. But obviously, we have to make do with the circumstances we're in.
I met you in Hofstra University. This is how I know you, and you were amazing from the beginning. I know that right now you are going to graduate school, but also during your undergraduate degree, you switched majors. Can you talk a little bit about that and why students shouldn't be scared about changing their majors as drastically as you did?
Oh, great. Thanks for calling me out. That's fine. I actually started in pre-med. I started as a biology major, and then I actually switched to a chemistry major because I thought I really liked chemistry, and I do really like chemistry. However, I realized that being pre-med wasn't my life goal because I saw that there were problems and inequities within our healthcare system that I didn't want to perpetuate by playing into the system as a medical practitioner. And so instead, I decided to go for rhetoric and public advocacy because there is a division within rhetoric and public advocacy called health communication, which really did speak to what I wanted to talk about and what I wanted to learn about, like inequity, how to quantify disparity. And I was able to study what I want. And that's what college really is. And people don't think of college that way. They think it's an extension of high school where you have to learn things to just continue the learning process. No, you learn what you want. You specialize in what you want to like learn about, and it should be about what you want to learn about, not what your parents want, not what society wants from you, but what you want to learn about. And you're going to hear a lot of criticism about humanity based majors and how a marketability and whether or not you can get a job afterwards. You can get a job with any major. Majors just showcase what you have learned. You have to tell people and you have to be able to market your major as applicable to the job search. So don't be afraid to try to figure out what you want to learn by taking different classes and then finally figuring it out. Although I changed my major, I still have a chem minor. And if you want, you could do a dual major. There's all of these different options that are available at the collegiate level that I feel like doesn't get talked about until you're actually in the process of college.
I know that when you graduated, you went to grad school and you're currently pursuing it in Florida. Could you care to explain us about the application process, where you are now, and what your goals are?
Yeah, so I'm currently in Orlando, Florida, because that is where the University of Central Florida is. I used to be a competitor on the speech and debate team. And so when I went to grad school, I wanted to go for communication and I wanted to make sure the program was specifically looking for people who needed to be TAs or teaching assistants slash associates or coaches for speech and debate teams. And the reason why I did this is because these assistantships often lead to full ride scholarships, right? You work and then they pay for your tuition and they pay you a stipend. So you get paid to get a degree. And they don't make you work more than 20 hours a week. So it's very manageable. It is a living wage. Obviously, you can't buy luxuries all the time. It's not like that, but it is a living wage. I am able to survive off of it. And it's great because I get both teaching experience, coaching experience, work experience that's very marketable, as well as get my degree for no cost at all. And so when applying to graduate programs in particular, I applied to about 12 undergraduate institutions. I
Wow.
applied to 3 grad schools, right? You really need to narrow down your search when it comes to grad school because you aren't going to want like so many applications out there because one, applications are really expensive, and two, at that point in your career, you know which programs speak to your interests. So it's really just an easier process holistically compared to undergraduate applications. But at the same time, there is not a personal statement, but a statement of
Mm.
purpose, which is different from
Mm.
a personal statement because a personal statement is about you. Rather, a statement of purpose is what do you plan to do in grad school? What do you want to learn? What do you want to talk about? What are your research interests? And so it really is specialized studying what interests you and what can you bring in terms of research. And that's really important to know before you go into grad school.
Right. And I know that you're in your last year of grad school. You had done this. You had done this for a few years before, and right now with the pandemic, how has that affected you as a student and as a teacher assistant, and overall as someone who's living in Florida outside of their home state? How has it affected your activities?
Great. I love this question because I feel like we talk about it all the time, but we can never stop talking about it. I remember when the pandemic first hit, everything got basically shut down, right? Like
Yes.
I coach speech and debate, all the tournaments got canceled. And that really hurt some of our senior upperclassmen because they were unable to get their national tournaments that really is the culminating moment in their speech and debate career. So there was that sense of loss
Mhm.
from COVID-19. And now I think rather than a sense of loss, we're trying to figure out a translation for our in-person activities into a virtual space. And
Mm.
I think by trying to figure out a translation, we're we're forgetting that the virtual space is just inherently a very different space. Like the way I teach an argumentation and debate class over the Zoom is going to be very different than when I do it in person because in person I can project my voice differently. I can showcase like with my body language how you're supposed to deliver speeches, and I can't do that over Zoom. And I don't think translating that in-person instruction onto Zoom is necessarily the most effective way of teaching,
Mm.
but it's all we know how to do right now. And so I think there's that discrepancy of like, are we really learning as much as we can be in these times? I do think a lot of teachers have put in a lot of effort to make their classes, the most learning friendly and student centered they can be, but I do think there's a lot of uncertainties around the semester that makes it really hard to engage fully.
And lastly, for this interview right now, I wanted to ask you, what would you tell students who are right now in the position of applying to college and they feel like it's too much? They feel like they don't know where to start. They don't have anyone who can help them. If you could give them a piece of advice so they can be stronger in this journey, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so I've talked about the personal statement a lot, and I'm going to talk about it again because, like, it's so critical, in my personal opinion, to showcase who you are and the particular perspective you're going through as an individual through your personal statement. And it was one of the most powerful pieces of writing that I've done. And I think before talking to anyone about what they think your personal statement should be, right? Don't brainstorm with someone else. Write what you authentically feel is a great way to showcase your perspective, right? Your diverse, unique opinion. And write that story first, proofread it, and then bring it to someone. And if they're like, oh no, this is complete trash, well, then, maybe you weren't being authentic enough or honest enough in your writing. It's about being honest, it's about being authentic. And so, really honing in on that authentic advocacy within your writing is really important. And it's best done when there's no outside influences. So just take a couple of hours to write out your story, your perspective, and then go to someone. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you so much for talking to us today, Mary. This was great. I hope that you find everything else that you're going to do in the future great. And this was How I Got In, and thank you for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me.